That's not good.
Oh, just wonderful.
Is this right?
Huh?
Is this right?
We may be coming up with a solution on that septic treatment plant. It's funny, we had a committee meeting yesterday, and
We're going live in about 30 seconds here.
they're gonna have a recommendation by Monday.
It's paper.
Well, my last suggestion was,
Good afternoon. We're going to call a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order at 3 p.m. on September 21st. This meeting's been scheduled for budget discussions. And if you have a cell phone, if you would disable it, silence it, or throw it out the door so it doesn't disturb us, that'd be good. And the board wishes to express our condolences and prayers to Larry Inman as his father died yesterday morning. And for the ones of you that don't know, Larry's lost his mother, his sister, his brother, and now his dad all in the last year and a half. So our heartfelt sympathies really go out to him. And would you do the roll call, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Wheelock? Fleece?
Present.
Max Bauer?
Here.
Thomas?
Yep.
Richardson?
Here.
Lemko?
Here.
Henschel?
Present.
Gilman?
Here.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. And would you read the public comment address?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. A, any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. B, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairman shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. 1, chairperson may at his or her discretion extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Is there anyone desiring to speak at this time? As we have topics come up that perhaps you're here on, we will allow public comment during our discussion in a period of time that we're discussing the topic. Is there anyone desiring to speak? Seeing none. First item on the agenda is Michigan State University Extension. Mr. Cudney.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Appreciate the opportunity to come back in front of the Board of Commissioners for a discussion about our budget submission, and apologize for my schedule. The last meeting, I had a personal conflict that evening and it could not be rescheduled, so thank you for allowing me to come back.
Pat, if you would state your name and your position, please.
Yes, I'm Patrick Cudney. I'm the District Coordinator for Michigan State University Extension.
I'm Suzanne Rinke. I'm the Office Manager at MSU Extension Grand Traverse County.
Thank you.
I believe we're here today to answer any questions that you may have regarding our 2012 budget submission, and I'm glad to answer those questions, and Suzanne is here to assist should that be necessary.
Does anyone have any questions of the extension? Ross?
We are eliminating a position in your budget, Patrick?
We are actually eliminating a position and a half, and then another temporary part-time role that's not a regular employed position.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. We've eliminated a full-time educational program assistant working on parenting education programs. We've eliminated a half-time FTE office specialist position, and we've also eliminated our summer diagnostic clinic, our horticultural diagnostic clinic, for next summer. We have had that program and provided that service this summer, but we've taken that out of our budget request for 2012. So those are 3 positions, 2 specific positions, and 1 is a temporary.
The temporary one, Pat, I think was about $6,000.
Correct, $6,000. Yep.
how many people participated in was that horticulture aimed at private gardeners or aimed?
It's basically home horticulture, insect, pest diagnostics. We had a diagnostic clinic on Wednesday, every day of the week during the summer growing hours, and we tried to encourage our clientele to come on Wednesday because we would have that office staffed that day for immediate questions. People can certainly come anytime during the regular office hours and leave samples, leave insects, leave questions, and we have to return those calls. But we did have the one-day diagnostic clinic staffed each Wednesday. Our hope next summer is that we will continue to be able to offer that diagnostic service but pay for it in alternative ways.
Okay. And I mean, the cut of the position and a half is acceptable to you and your organization, or?
Well, certainly it's acceptable. We knew there was budget targets that we needed to work within. One of the metrics that that this board had presented to us in previous discussions were a question that was asked, are there other entities, are there other agencies that provide that service? And for this position in particular, this parenting education position, there are other entities, nonprofits, that do provide parenting education for low-income families. I still would argue that this program was not a duplication of services because we were filling a very specific need with this position, but at the same time, when we needed to look at our budget and make appropriate cuts because of the increase to the base contribution to extension in our new contract, this was a position that we identified that we did feel comfortable in reducing.
Herb?
Are you familiar with the survey that we did amongst the commissioners? I don't know if
I
you
am.
got a copy of that. And each of there was 5 different areas that were rated very, very low. How do you respond to the lowness, and why would we continue to keep those programs when we rate them that low? And I noticed Dennis did not cut some of them, even though a lot of that was part of the things that they looked at, the budgets, when we started looking at something that was rated especially below 1, which was called the Greening Michigan. And so why would we continue funding that? Parenting education is very low. Consumer horticulture is very low. Safe Kids is very low. Nutrition, health and nutrition are very low programs as far as the response from the county commissioners.
It's a great question. Parenting education and consumer hort were the 2 positions that we just finished discussing. In terms of Greening Michigan, that's the name of our institute at Michigan State University, one of the 4 institutes that our staff operate out of. Greening Michigan really is community and economic development programming. The Health and Nutrition is another institute where we offer programming. Those 2 programs are included in the base assessment that the county has agreed to in the memorandum of agreement. Those 4 institutes are the 4 program institutes that our staff work in across the entire state. So those are part of the base agreement that we have negotiated with Grand Traverse County and other counties throughout the state. So we had additional programs that Grand Traverse County had supported in addition to those core extension university programs. And 2 of the additional 3 that you just identified were eliminated. The 4th one, or the 3rd program in addition to our base programs, is the North Shore Safe Kids program. That program is incredibly impactful, incredibly large. It serves a tremendous amount of youth and families throughout Grand Traverse County. The program is just far too valuable to eliminate, and the amount of resource that it provides the community, we felt that we could fall underneath the budget targets that were identified for us and preserve that program. We are supplanting some of the costs of that staff program with other trust and agency accounts, university resources held in trust at the county, program revenue, for lack of a better term, that we are using to offset a little bit of that cost, and we're going to try to do more of that next year because that is a program that I strongly encourage Grand Traverse County to continue to support. And certainly as a university, though it's not one of our core deliverables, we're going to do what we can locally to see what we can do about growing that program and possibly turning it into a regional program. It's a tremendous program, so that is the one that we asked to preserve.
Just for the benefit of those who might be paying attention right now, what is it that makes it so valuable to the community and then in the future to the region? There's
nothing else available like it. Everywhere from bike safety, helmet safety, car seat check safety. it's hard to put a statistical metric on the value of how many children whose either lives were saved or families were saved from injury because they participated in a simple car seat safety check. Again, it's unique. It serves thousands of families and kids in this county through the multiple venues that programming is offered. Now there's even a winter sledding. I think you heard that presentation last time on helmet safety for winter sledding because of the unfortunate loss of a child in the county due to a sledding accident. It fills a void that does exist in not just Grand Traverse County, but again, what I would argue in other counties, and that's why our goal is to work with others to try to expand that program beyond just a single county entity, seek grant dollars and resources to expand the impacts of that program. I'm sorry I don't have more details on specific numbers served. We can provide those to you in this past year, but it's literally thousands of kids.
No, the reason I ask, I mean, you know, when I was younger, I mean, sledding, that's a great example. I can tell you, I've wiped out sledding as a kid a number of times. I mean, it's something as a part of growing up. To assume that the only way to do it now is with helmets, and I'm not trying to, I mean, it's there are things. What are we doing?
Injury prevention is what we're doing.
Injury prevention. And as far as, you know, I raised a couple of kids. They're now gone, flown the coop, and we had appropriate seating for them in the vehicles. We were advised to do so by parents, by friends, by people, you know. Do we need a class to teach? Do we really need a class to teach people how to put a car seat in a car? I mean, really?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's also, in case you had forgotten, I know you're aware, but in case you had forgotten, Munson Trauma also supports this with $20,000 annually. It's a partnership with Munson Hospital. We work with the Sheriff's Department, Police Department, Fire, at their facilities to offer these venues, and I know it seems something simple. I have 3 children. We have 2 that are still in car seats. One's in a booster, one's in a car seat, and I guarantee I don't get them locked in as well as I should, and I learned that through that process. So it's a valuable program, and I'll certainly argue that it needs to be supported, and we've been able to preserve it while meeting our budget targets for 2012.
I think also I'd like to add that in our discussions with Pat, we took into account the level of support that there seemed to be from the county board for this program when we talked about it this last year. Also, Pat and I had some pretty lengthy discussions about efforts that they may undertake in this next year to seek grants and other sources, other means of helping to support this program in the future. And, you know, in my way of thinking, to continue the program while we pursue those kinds of things and see if there is community support in other ways to help support this program as well, or expand the program, because actually this has been a statewide recognized program. It has received a state award, and there is surrounding communities have expressed an interest in seeing this program expanded to other counties. So, you know, I think it's a program that's been well respected, and I think there may be other means besides government funding in the future that may come forth to help support the program in the future.
Christine?
Well, I can speak a little bit about this program. Dennis did a wonderful presentation at the Michigan Association of Counties about the collaboration that we have with Munson on this program. I can tell you that in 2010, a total of 13,936 people attended car seat inspections, chill out for winter. Jen Ritter, who happens to be the person who does this program for Grand Traverse County and MSU Extension, has not only been recognized by the state, but has been recognized nationally for her Chill Out for Winter program through RiskWatch. The fire educator that we have funded up until next year in this proposed budget, 25% of the programs that are done by RiskWatch are done by Jen Ritter. She does Chill Out for Winter. She went to the junior high, and actually, there were children in the junior high that did not know how to put on a life jacket. I mean, you would think that this is not necessary. But, you know, what I heard Dennis say to the Michigan Association of Counties was Munson sees this as an extremely valuable program in a way to prevent more use of their emergency services and the hospital for children. I guess I can't say enough good about this program. But, Commissioner Gilman, if you would like to have this to see exactly how many children and adults and the different programs that were done in 2010, I've got it for you.
Sorry?
Biggest grand vision.
How much money do we spend on the kids program overall, roughly?
The cost is associated with some salary and fringe costs for the county employee, which is Jennifer Ritter, as Commissioner Max Bauer stated. Can you break that out for us?
$29,797.57.
That's the general fund
$29,000
contribution.
is what the county puts into
It's
the program.
personnel, it's all personnel.
It's all personnel.
Yep,
And-
all their
and-
supplies and all the.
And how much is the whole program, how much does the whole program cost? Do you have that number or not?
Well, it'd be the
Well, you
remaining.
add that and add 20,000 because
We pay about
Munson puts in 20.
Okay. So
That's the personnel cost, though,
So it's a $50,000 program and we're paying 60% of it, roughly.
and that's just the personnel costs. If you figure in the resources that come from Kohl's and the different grant sources that provide the car seats, that provide the safety helmets, that provide the life jackets, all of those are donations. So the cost to the county is $29,797, which is a portion of the salary and fringe benefits cost for the employee. The other $20,000 that pays for the rest of the employment costs comes from a grant from Munson Trauma.
I would argue this is a very small amount of money to provide a very big benefit. Prevention programs are always tricky because it's very hard to say, look what we prevented, because you don't know what you prevented. But even the prevention of one accident through this expenditure, it seems to me, one serious accident would be worth $30,000, so.
Jason?
And just one comment as far as going into the future. I mean, obviously, there are, as some people put, stakeholders in this, Munson being one, the Trauma Center being one. I'll tell you who really has an interest in it, and one of the reasons why I have a partial objection to this is because I'm just wondering if the money is coming from the appropriate place. Is the county the appropriate funding mechanism? But for example, if I was an insurer, I'd want all of these programs. If this is something that works, and I was an insurer, I'd make sure these things are fully funded, come hell or high water. And I think that maybe those are some areas you could approach as far as grants for in the future. To fully fund if you don't feel it's fully funded now, or to continue its funding if and in fact we run into a situation where we cannot do it any longer.
Thank you for that input. That's one of the early conversations we had, was exactly that. We were identifying with the existing core partners who isn't at the table. How can we expand this program? Who can we approach? And again, I do feel strongly enough about this that I'm investing some of my time personally, even though it's not one of the core deliverables of MSU Extension. But the value of this to the community that I live in is that important. And we're going to look to expand those partnerships, bring in additional resources, reduce the county general fund contribution to the program, and maintain this into the future, hopefully expand this into the future. So your comments are well received. Thank you. Please.
There are several insurance companies that are already partners with Safe Kids Worldwide. So through a trickle-down effect or whatever, they do supply different things. I mean, we just got a shipment the other day of bike helmets from Priority Health. I mean, so they are involved. It's just as far as paying salary and stuff, that's always kind of the catch, and trying to find a source that's willing to provide that.
Ron?
Just out of curiosity, if there was an accident and somebody used safety equipment incorrectly and claimed that they were taught incorrectly and they sued, who would be liable for that?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. I think anytime someone gets injured, they can sue anybody at any time for anything. But I would not be, I'm not an attorney, I would not be qualified to even respond to that.
Jason?
I believe the question he's really asking is, does our involvement fiduciarily, does our involvement, and understand you may not be able to answer it, but does it put us at risk where no involvement means no risk? You know, I guess that's we don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm unable to respond to that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Dennis, do you have anything?
No?
I did bring one other document with us that's fairly fresh, and if Suzanne would distribute that, please. In our new structure, we've talked about other academic staff that are now available and responsible to work in Grand Traverse County beyond the educators just sitting in the local unit. This is brand new, it's dated, it's going to change because we're currently populating this experts database across the state. But this is a list. There's 6 pages of academic staff. You can see their institutes that they're assigned to, you can see their roles, and you can see the resource that will be provided to Grand Traverse County at the beginning of the new fiscal year under our new contractual arrangement. So I just brought, that will change. It's time dated because it's brand new. We just printed that yesterday and ran copies. And I'll provide you with more updates in the coming year, but it's an example of how this new system works to meet very specific needs. So I thought that would be of interest to you today.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is included in the budget recommendation at this time. So the only thing that would be necessary by the board, and this is a mechanic issue, would be if the board wanted to change the recommendation, there should be some action now to direct staff to make the change. Other than that, it would remain as recommended.
So,
Herb?
what's the total dollars that we fund, and what's the total dollars that we get back in services from MSU?
The total 2012 budget written recommended is $282,233, down from $294,904 in 2011. And I cannot give you a specific return on investment of MSU resources. I will be able to provide that, but currently that is not available. Again, we're moving into this new structure. In the past, it's always been easily 3-to-1 for Grand Traverse County. But again, that's not an exact number, and I'm not going to be able to provide that to you today.
Okay. Yeah, I was under the impression it was like 3 or 4. So at one time, I think it was 5 or 6 to 1.
I kind of recall Jim telling us at the time 5 to 1 was where I thought it was,
Yeah.
but.
Well, it's always
It's all
safer for me to be
changing now.
conservative.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to underestimate.
Well, thank you, Pat. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our discussions. The first one would be the Health Department building. And Dennis, are you speaking to that?
Well, this was requested by Commissioner Max Bauer, I think, and I don't mean to put words in her mouth. Maybe you want to kind of lead us off?
I was just concerned that we need to address this if we're going to build a new health department building, and we need to put it into the budget.
And there is nothing in the budget for it at this time, other than money that we've allocated or that we have available in the fund balance of the health department, and money that we kind of set aside in the debt retirement. But the difficulty that we had, Dean and I talked about this, is until we get the bids,
Right.
and we know what it's going to cost, I really can't put a number on it. I don't know if it's going to be $100,000 a year or $300,000 a year. So I'm kind of, we're waiting until the bids are due October 14th, and you're going to get the results on the 19th of October. So, but I think Commissioner Max Bauer brought up an important point, to point out the fact that there is nothing included in this budget to make that building happen. And I guess at this point, I haven't identified a source of money to make up that difference until such a time that we know what that cost is going to be.
And I just wanted it on the agenda so the board
you.
is aware that this could affect next year's budget. That's really all I wanted to.
Ross?
How much were we paying on the old building and bonds before we retired?
$120,000 roughly.
Retired that debt last October.
I understand that. but
Yeah,
how-
it was roughly 120,000. I think the last year was more like 110, but it was about 120,000, if I recall right. Does that sound right to you?
We can check the building authority tab, and I can tell you exactly what it is, but I think it was a little higher than that.
Was it? Would you check, please?
$152,000? Oh, I meant that's revenues.
I'll defer to Commissioner Lempool if he found it, okay? Well, we don't have the 2010 is the first column. I don't have the information available in the budget document because we're only showing 2010.
Right.
Any other comments or questions on the Health Department building? As soon as we have it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It is out for bid now, right?
That's correct.
And did you have some sort of a general cost estimate from the architect?
Well, you'll recall that originally we were looking, and I'm going to talk in generalities here. This isn't
I'm only,
specific.
honestly, Dennis, I'm only looking for generalities.
Yeah,
Okay.
remember when we were looking at a remodel, we were looking in the $3 million range?
Yeah.
When we got the initial determination from the architect, remember, it was around a $6 million cost for a new building. But that was very preliminary, and that was, you had directed us to put a couple of options in there that might be cost savings, and it also didn't take into account market and, the competitiveness of, and the availability of work. And so, I think that's going to come in lower than that. But, truly, I don't, until we see it, we won't know.
So the architect did not put any kind of a general cost estimate?
He said $6 million.
This is on the building he designed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the original cost estimate. But, I think it'll come in less than that. And then, there's so many options there that we'll have to look at. The length of a bond issue, what we have available in the fund balance now with the health department, what we can free up here. So there are a number of ways we can go. We might be able to extend that out to an extra 5 years, bring the cost down. We're going to have to look at all those options. But until I have a good number, I'm hesitant to do that. We had originally figured that it was going to cost us, I think, around $120,000 for us to be able to do the remodel. And now, of course, that's up significantly, but don't know how much.
Okay, and so the $120,000 for the remodel was roughly equivalent to what we were already paying on the bonds for the old
That's correct.
building.
Yes.
So you sort of consider that like a flat,
Yeah.
sort of a flat line as far as expense.
That's kind of what we were hoping for. Now, the other thing I would tell you, I was thinking about this a little bit last night, the other thing I want to sit down with Dean and Bill Rokas and look at is, and I don't know that we have anything, but I want to see what kind of other debt we might be retiring in the next year or 2 or 3 that we might be able to, as we retire that debt, we might be able to offset and use that revenue to help assist for this building. But I haven't looked at that yet. So our goal was, as soon as we got the bids in, then we'd sit down and try to look at what your financial options were and come back and tell you the potential for that working.
And that's going to be on the 19th roughly?
That's right.
Okay.
October 19th.
yeah.
October 19th.
Any other questions or comments? Does anybody in the public have any comment on the Health Department building, proposed building? Seeing none, we'll move on to rural fire. We have Chief Sologic here today with us, and Paul, you're the chairman of rural fire?
Yes.
Chairman of the rural fire board. If you two gentlemen want to come up and introduce yourselves. And we've got some questions as far as the funding of the retirement benefits for an employee of yours.
Paul Biondo, speaking on behalf of Rural Fire as the chairman. Bill Sudlacci, Grand Traverse Rural Fire Chief.
Thank you. Christine?
In case you didn't catch any of our previous meetings, I'm not fond of this arrangement. I do not think that we ought to have a county employee working for rural fire and then having you just reimburse us. So my question is, well, my suggestion to this board is going to be to discontinue this arrangement. And why don't you just, I mean, you're the employee that you reimburse us for could just retire and then you could just hire that employee. Why do you want this arrangement?
Well, I guess I'm not aware that she can retire. I got notice of this really just a few days back. I do remember some of the history. I don't know if you have any information over the years that this has been going on since the 1981 agreement, then 1990. So there's been different agreements over the years. And I guess I would, when I look over some of these signatures of people like Virginia Watson and Roger Greiner, and I mean, this is some pretty old history here. Back in the day, when we had the administration board for the 2 fire departments and all that, we began a process to work together, and the little appropriation from the county was these employees. Julie is one of the last, I believe, remaining employees still under that agreement. Anyone new, we've taken under a different arrangement. So since she has been an employee of record for, I don't know how many years, 20-some-odd years, it was basically to her advantage. I mean, I think we tried to give her options before to look at that, but she started in a program, and I think that she wanted to continue in that program. So we have funded, the cost of it. I think you'll see it's a pass-through expense.
Well, I don't consider it a pass-through expense, and I don't believe our finance director does either, but I won't speak for him. Dean, my concern are the retirement costs down the road. Would you speak to that?
Yeah, this particular individual is on our defined benefit retirement plan, and you are paying current costs, but there's an unfunded liability associated with that will continue on after this employee leaves employment. And I was just looking at this agreement that was signed in 2008 today for the first time as well, and it really does not address how that is handled after that, because with the last paycheck that would be paid and reimbursed by rural fire, there's still an obligation beyond that point. So that is an issue with this arrangement, and I think that's where Commissioner Maxbauer is concerned.
Would you be willing to take that liability for this employee?
I can't speak on behalf of the Rural Fire Board, I guess, on this issue, since we haven't really, we've considered this issue, I guess, over time, and we thought that we were, looks under the MERS program, which I just have seen this in the last 15 minutes of her specific MERS printout. But, we are funding the additional costs of her, I assume the actuarial table for her retirement fund. I realize there's, probably in hindsight some other costs. So I'm not, I guess to not take a lot of time of the board right now, since I'm not up to speed with everything here, I might say that the simple situation is we entered into this agreement along with the county years ago. So we bought what we bought, and in all fairness to the employee, which is, one of the reasons I guess I'm here, is she's been a loyal employee for a lot of years. I think that she was under an assumption, and we continue to have different agreements over the years, so it's not very fair to her to say, hey, we're going to change this without any notice. So I don't know enough about, I guess, what you think the liability would be out there, except I can say that I guess the county's appropriation toward fire in general has been under $100,000 since I've been around for 20 years, and I'd speak that it's probably under $20,000 now in some sort. So you don't have a lot of eggs in the game of the fire and ambulance business that I'm aware of. But so I think that we've tried to do these things as good neighbors, and I didn't create the program.
I understand.
I probably was around during some of the renewals, but
we have this situation of an employee here that's the only one, I believe, that's probably left under this kind of an arrangement. So I don't know the answer. Now, if she is eligible for a retirement right now, I'm not aware of that. In fact, I was just surprised at some of the facts I was looking at here of how many years she's been working and all that.
Well, I clearly don't think she's eligible for a retirement. She's vested so that she would be able to retire at some time in the future, and I think the other option would be to discontinue this and then start her up as a defined contribution employee or something where in the future she'd have a 457 plan or something like that. But I guess I don't know. I understand what Dean is saying, but I don't know how we could come up with any other kind of a charge, because what is charged to her is what the actuarials are saying is necessary to fund her retirement in the future, isn't it?
Correct, but the piece that's the unknown is the fact that those valuations are done annually.
Right.
And we're not fully funding the unfunded piece. There's no doubt you're paying an increased amount for her retirement, as we are for our employees, and we're currently in a situation with MERS where we're in a 3-year freeze. Ultimately, we go down to a 5-year, so that retirement cost is going to increase substantially in the near term.
Yeah, that makes sense when you explain it like that.
The thing with the defined benefit retirement is the fact that they have you on very few defined benefit pension plans are fully funded. And they know that you can't pay that unfunded piece annually because of how large it is, and they give you a period of time to amortize that.
Right.
And what most of the retirement systems have done, we were traditionally on a 30-year amortization, but MERS, because we've moved away from defined benefit into defined contribution, has us on an accelerated funding. So this will become a larger cost for you, and depending on when this person retires, the county would still have a large liability that has not been funded, just for one employee, as we do.
I don't doubt that, and I realize you do that for all your employees, but we did enter this into a number of years ago, and we have been paying, whatever the MERS actuarial costs were, I believe $16,000 or $17,000 a year toward her retirement. So it's not like, we've been close, I guess, in some ways, but that also takes into account many factors when somebody retires, how long they're going to collect, which is the unknown. So,
well, just so you have some perspective, and I do hear what you're saying, we're only 50% funded in that retirement plan. So everything you've done to date with that employee is only 50% of what MERS is telling us that cost is going to be. So.
Well, but again, they're working on a table that bases it on how long each employee lives.
That's true. That's what actuarials do. They work on life expectancy. This employee will draw that benefit for years into the future. And my interest is the county's interest here, so you have to appreciate where I'm coming from.
And I don't doubt that. I have no problem. I realize that you're looking at budget costs, and I can understand that. Everybody is, and you're doing your due diligence. But we did have some I mean, I don't know if we've gotten some of these old documents to you that we've done over the years, 1981, 1990, Julie had printed off some different ones that have been to the county. Quite a bit of documentation, and like I said, so there's some pretty old names in here from, back in the agreement, and I think the original process was the county, it was involved in the fire system as far as central dispatch, and the secretaries, which Julie was one of them, I believe, at the time.
Paul, you understand that my concern is for the county, especially down the road. I look at this arrangement, and I understand it's an old one, but not everything old is good.
I agree, but we're talking about a real human being here.
I'm not questioning, this doesn't, I don't know this person. I've never met this person. This is absolutely not personal.
I understand that.
But when I stop and look at the arrangement and I think, you know what? If I'm in Garfield Township, if I can get my employee to be a county employee under the defined benefit plan, and I don't have, and I'm not liable for that pension down the road. Boy, in Garfield Township, I'm not picking on Garfield Township in particular, Chuck, but I see the Garfield supervisor in the audience, so I'm mentioning that.
He's good to pick on.
But I mean, heck, it's a wonderful arrangement. Rural Fire's not going to have to pay that pension, but the county is. And that's what I don't like about the arrangement.
And I realize that, but I might ask you to look over some of these old documents. I believe she was a county employee when she's been a county employee in the origination of this, probably the admin board, I assume, back when that process happened and everything else.
And I understand that. My
and we
opinion
had many
is,
under that, but keep in mind, you could not get insurance for people without being in a group. So when very often some small employers, I believe many of these employees for a while under Metro were actually Garfield Township employees and still are in essence. So we all did things that were created back then. I'm not saying it can't be undone. I'm just saying what we might want to do is look at what this employee has, and I'm not familiar with her circumstance on retirement, although it looks to me like this sheet is indicating some dates coming up in 2012. So, if it's just a little bit of time, I guess I'd like to know more about what she has coming.
Jason?
Well, I think time is relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking earlier about assumptions. My understanding, from what I've heard from some conversations on this, is that she was a county employee, and that when rural fire, when some of those responsibilities were moved off, as a favor to her, with the expectation, the assumptions, that she was going to be retiring or moving along within a couple of years, it was done as a favor to allow the pass-through. And now, it almost seems as the county's being made to look like the bad guy for looking out for its best interests. And ultimately, the best interest is to at least find out if our pension is going to be fully funded, that she's going to be paid.
Absolutely. I have no problem. I mean, I agree. We assumed that this was a full actuarial, and that's the way they work, is they fund it 50% or 75% or some level, because there's expected, not everybody makes it to the golden age. But again, so that's what we got into. And I will say that we probably would want to do some history with some of the folks that were around the beginning. Actually, not really under Rural Fire. She was actually a county administration board, which was a joint board between the county, Metro, and rural until just a few years ago.
Which makes it almost more of a favor done to her, done for her. So.
Well, I don't know how much of a favor it is. It's the fire system that protects most people in the county. So it's,
Dick?
This was
it's
done.
what they do.
This was done mostly in the beginning for her and others.
Sure.
To get them into a group, more than anything else, for healthcare and retirement.
Probably Chief Hanna and Chief...
That was the whole idea of it, is to get them into a bigger group, and of course, the county was the bigger group.
Right.
And
Garfield Township, I believe at the time, also had a funding where they actually had insurance. You couldn't even medical insurance, remember, at the time, without some sort of group. So I believe that both the chiefs at the time probably, and I could be wrong about Chief Hanna, but also Chief Mueller, who passed away.
Back farther.
They were all...
Back farther.
Even back farther, yeah. So
Schomburger?
Yeah, these are things that we created as a group between Metro Fire and the townships, and Rural Fire and the townships, and the county. It was called the Administration Board, actually. So it wasn't really run under rural until probably the last few years. And I can't remember when we dissolved the
Must be
administration.
7 years ago, 6 years ago.
The administration board, I don't think it was that long ago. But
Dennis?
The only comment I wanted to make, I think, I'll be surprised if we can come up with any kind of a different number from an actuarial, than we're given actuarially. But there is another part of it, and I guess, Paul, I would like to see those old documents, because what concerns me even more is, and I think we should not kid ourselves, she is a county employee. Right now, she's a county employee. Mm-hmm. And that is what kind of mechanism is in place to limit or eliminate any liability that the county may have for any action she takes. in regards to the fire department. You know, I mean, she is a clerical position, so I don't know that there's a great exposure there, but I would like to know whether there's anything in any of the agreements, and if not, and we stay the same, we should at least make sure the agreements say that the fire department is going to indemnify the county and name us for any actions that she takes in her employment.
Sonny?
Well, Paul and Bill, you weren't here last
Yes,
week, or 2 weeks ago when we had this discussion, and, you know, I tried to do a little history lesson of how Grand Traverse County Fire Department was Grand Traverse County Fire Department. Dick Weiler was the fire chief, and how it progressed through the process. And, you know, originally, is my recollection, and I'm probably correct, this originally was just an appropriation to the fire service from the Grand Traverse County. And then at some point back in the, probably about in the late 80s, early 90s, we needed to identify what that appropriation was for. And at that point, it was determined that that appropriation was funding the 2 secretarial positions, Marcia's and Julie's. And, you know, then along comes the expansion of the 2 fire departments, the division of the 2 fire departments, the rural metro thing. And the evolution is down to the point that, you know, Marcia has went to Metro. You know, she's still employed, she's still there.
Right.
You know, Wayne switched to Metro, you know, probably the early 90s. Metro took over their employees, but Julie was kind of stuck out there, and it was not a group for her at that time. So that's why she remained a county employee, and here we are, you know, 20 years later, and we're still there, you know, and that's the, you know, to me, the problem is I'm not going to tell a county employee, well, you have to retire, and then if Metro wants to, or rural wants to hire you back, they can hire you back on an hourly rate. You know, that's not fair to that employee either, you know, because no matter how we cut it, she is a Grand Traverse County employee. How we got to there is a long, convoluted story, but the fact is, she is a Grand Traverse County employee.
Herb?
Yeah, I don't think this is the only instance that we have that we contract with other organizations. Michigan State Extension, I think we have 3 secretaries that we pay for them. So we got the same problem with there in the, you know, so, you know, I think that's one of those issues as to how do we handle that kind of a situation? Do we continue that relationship, then we can put it to bed, or do we try and figure out how to get out of these relationships because we're paying for their retirement benefits also, and we have some unfunded benefits from those also. And I don't know if there's any other areas that we have that same problem with. Maybe the Commission on Aging. I mean, we got people that we hire, they're all county employees. We're in the same boat. So how do we resolve this issue, and how do we continue to go forward, or do we just put it to bed and say we're going to continue doing it?
Chris?
Well, I'm going to take a stab at making a motion. I'm not going to make the motion to discontinue the arrangement, but I'm going to make the motion that we direct our county administrator to renegotiate this agreement so that the county has some legal protection, and that rural fire goes on record that any retirement costs down the road will be borne by rural fire. I don't know. Was that clear?
Well, he can't speak for the rural board.
No, I understand that, but I'm making a motion to ask our administrator to renegotiate. That I can do.
Support.
Is there support for the motion? Supported by Henschel. Is there any further discussion? Dick?
I can kind of go along with that motion. I'll never go along with cutting her off, because to me, that would be an absolute double cross. But we probably should, A, renegotiate her future and not let it happen again. But like Herb said, we've probably got other places it's already happening.
Well, yeah, and I mean, do we do it just for this one, or do we do it for all of them? Because then we should be renegotiating with Michigan State Extension for the secretaries that we're paying for that really are under their responsibility, they're our employees. And how do we take care of that unfunded mandate also?
Well, I think there is a distinction between this organization and MSU Extension, and certainly between the Commission on Aging, which is totally under this board, just a separate revenue stream. The difficulty I see, and I think I will support the motion just to at least investigate, but the difficulty of arriving at the cost of one employee within the whole actuarial, how much money has been put in over time and how has that money grown or shrunk or whatever. I mean, it'd be very difficult to arrange a cost.
Well, we'll see how he does if this passes.
I also hate to waste, valuable employees' time, for, chasing something that may not be catchable anyway, but.
But certainly the legal liability would be, having the county indemnified would be good, I think.
Well, I think it's a good idea to review the agreement.
Thank you. I'll settle for that. I'll settle for that.
Point of order, so are you amending that to review it?
I said renegotiate was in the motion.
I'd say, in the way the motion is written as renegotiate, I think that means that we will be reviewing it.
Okay. Because there may be some other issues we'll have to deal with legally.
That's right.
There may be a lot of issues.
The reason this came up, and Herb, I disagree with you, because like Sonny said, Commission on Aging is under our envelope.
Oh, I know.
MSU Extension's completely a different situation there. This employee is the only employee that's not under the direct control of Dennis. We have absolutely no control over that employee, and probably 4.5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I brought this to the board's attention, and we had a very similar meeting at that time. And my recollection is that we were told, the board, this board, that that employee would be retiring within a year. So we agreed just to let things go. Well, here it is, 4.5 years later, the employee's still there. We still have the same liability that Max Bauer's talking about. Plus, we have the unfunded portion of the retirement. So I think her motion is probably a good one. We'll have administration sit down and negotiate with you guys and see what they come up with, and hopefully we can come up with an answer that satisfies everybody.
Sure, I understand.
One of the things that makes her the same as Commission on Aging and the others is because they're paying the bill. We don't have any liability except for this unfunded portion, and if we can solve that.
Well, that's not exactly true, because Dennis can call Georgia Durga, and he has superintendent control over that department and the employees. He can call Chief Sadlogic here, and he can suggest. He doesn't have.
Bill's always been reasonable. We've gotten along.
So that's the difference.
Well, except we're still not paying the bill.
Well, give us a shot at it.
Paying the whole bill.
Give us a shot at it. We'll review the agreement, and we'll look it over and sit down with these guys, and I'm sure we'll be able to work something out.
I think that's all fair.
Well, I guess from my perspective, I'm not sure I like the word renegotiate. I think it's certainly appropriate to review the agreement between the two and how we got here. But you have to, in reviewing that, you have to also have some understanding of how we got here. And that's going to be the tough piece to try to get, because the agreement, and I pulled a couple old ones, but the agreement has changed over the years. And, some of the stuff that's in one wasn't in the next one. So, was it stuff that should have been carried forward or wasn't, So, you're going to have to look, as part of the review of a ongoing document, if you will, you're going to certainly have to review the previous documents, because there's some history here that are in those documents, and, some history with, some people that may be able to remember. We sometimes don't write things down quite as clearly as we should, so, it works for all of us at the time, and sometimes those things don't work for us in the future, and that's where we're at with, a lot of the things that were going on. What worked for us 20 years ago in today's world doesn't necessarily work the same. You know, that's why it's probably appropriate to review the document. And, you know, I will support the idea of reviewing the document, but, you know, I'm certainly not supporting anything that will terminate this county employee under any
I didn't
circumstance.
suggest that.
Rob?
I think it goes without saying, but it still bears mentioning that we as a commission do appreciate the work you do to keep our citizens safe, all logistics aside, and thank you for coming in today to work on this logistics.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm sure we'll...
Well, we're not about to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so.
That's good.
Dennis,
Yes, sir.
what time would we, what type of timetable are we looking at here?
Well, I expect...
Just rough.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's fine.
Couple of weeks, we'll, you know, I want to get what Paul has. I'll sit down and get copies from him, make sure we got all the agreements, go through our file, and then I'll give these guys a call, and we'll see what we can work out. I also got to talk to Dean and MERS to see if there's a way to arrive at any kind of a number. That, I think, is
You may
the
want
biggest
to talk
question.
to the historian in your review.
I got a feeling he'll be talking to me.
You know,
Does everybody
possibly we can
understand
put
the
it on
motion?
Public Safety's agenda in October? Or you think
It's
it'll probably be
possible.
November?
It's possible. I'll give you an update.
Does everybody
Probably come to
understand the
Public
motion?
Safety one way or the other.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Was there anybody, this is a little in arrears, was there anybody in the public that had a comment on
Just talk about this.
rural fire, which we just discussed? We'd be more than glad to hear any opinions or comments. Okay, thank you. Next item is fireworks funding, Traverse City Convention and Visitors Bureau. Hello.
Hello.
Your name, please?
Well, I am not Brad Van Domlin. I'm Mary Rogers, a resident of Traverse City. Brad was unable to be here today due to the Convention and Visitors Bureau's board meeting going on at the same time. To give just, and I'll be very brief because I know you have a lot to do today, a brief history of the funding of the 4th of July fireworks. My understanding is that starting about 10 years ago, what was done is the Grand Traverse Area Coalition of Veterans looked at all of the municipalities that were serviced by the 4th of July fireworks, and they prorated the cost of a $25,000 fireworks show among that population and through those municipalities. So approximately $25,000 was raised each year and put on a great show for both the residents of our area and the tourists who visit us during that very popular time. Last year, about this time, you received a letter from the veterans indicating that they would not be asking for funding because they had chosen to not do the fundraising and coordination of fireworks for this year. Three of us in the community, myself, Brad Van Domlin, and Tim Hinckley, the executive director of the National Cherry Festival, when we heard about this, we self-appointed ourselves to be the Save the 4th of July fireworks. And we made a last-ditch effort to contact the municipalities, including Grand Traverse County, asking if you could find any room in your budget somewhere to give us some dollars towards that cause. And many municipalities were able to do that. The county was not, and it's perfectly understandable. We had stated we wouldn't be asking for the money, which a new group then did come forward and ask. So last year, we did save the fireworks. That was the good news. Of the municipalities who we approached, about 9 of them were able to give us funds equaling over $12,000, certainly not the $25,000 that was necessary to put on the display. My role was to seek private dollars and businesses. We were very successful, and all in all, we ended up with a surplus of $9,000, which we're very happy that we can put that toward next year's fund. We have a new plan in place to offer stability to the fireworks. The CVB had acted as the fiscal agent this last year on an emergency basis. Going forward, it will be the Festival Foundation, which is the 501c3 of the National Cherry Festival. So a committee will be assembled, including donors. We'll also be looking for some municipalities to be represented on that committee. And we hope to grow the fireworks into an even larger display. However, we do not intend to seek more dollars from municipalities than were set out 10 years ago based on that census. So we are back asking for the same amount of money as we have in the past, which for the county would be $5,000. And we hope that you will consider that in your budget plan for the upcoming year. Any questions? Yes.
Ross?
You mentioned the Cherry Festival 501c3?
Yes.
Okay, so but we are talking about two different fireworks displays, right?
Oh, certainly, yes.
One for the 4th and one for the fire.
Exactly. And they are completely unrelated. There's a perception that the Cherry Festival puts on the 4th of July, but in fact, they don't.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the comments you hear is like, well, you know, why do we need two within a week? And, you know, for me, it's like, well, you know, it's the 4th of July.
Well, there are two, I would have two responses to that. One would be, and Brad could speak to this even better, the number of phone calls that hotels received asking, are the fireworks still on in Traverse City? That story made it downstate. And many people were looking at changing their plans of coming to this area for the 4th of July. Fortunately, they were able to say, yes, we do have a show. Secondly, the fireworks aren't just about fireworks. It is our one, you know, it's probably our most patriotic day of the year. You know, we talk about the spirit of 9/11 and then the spirit of 9/12, that sense of coming together. And the 4th of July is really that day.
What is the 4th of July?
Wednesday.
No.
Wednesday.
You're talking the 4th of July, and a couple of commissioners have mentioned that date, but what is the celebration? It's Independence Day.
That's correct.
The 4th of July should disappear from your vocabulary, in my opinion, because truly, it's a celebration of Independence Day in this country.
Thank you very much.
On the 4th of July. Dennis?
Thank you.
Yeah, Mary, I wish Brad was here. I've asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. What is, I mean, obviously you said it's important to the hotels. What is the Tourism Bureau doing in terms of participating and helping to put on the fireworks? Is the Tourism Bureau going to be putting any money into this?
Yes. And
Can you tell
they
us how
did this
much?
last year. Well, I can tell you that Brad wrote his own personal check, which I won't say how much that was for. They, through one of their funds, which is the Grand Traverse Area Hospitality Association, gave $500.
Are they in-
I'm sorry, and an additional $1,500 through the CVB.
So are they going to be in the long-term plan?
Oh, yeah, very
Contributing
much
to
so.
this? What is their contribution going forward? If the county's going to give $5,000, what's the CVB going to be contributing?
I could not say that it will be above the $2,000 that they're giving now, but I'm not on their board, so I
see,
couldn't.
Okay. I thought you were with CVB. Sorry.
No, I'm just a resident.
Thanks.
Jason?
There probably are few people in the room who are more all about Independence Day and the origins of our country than I. But when I look at the money spent, and I've asked this question earlier, are we the appropriate place to be going to for funding for such things? Because while it is, yes, it's a celebration of our independence, it is also, it's fluff. I mean, I'm not saying that the day is fluff, I'm saying the fireworks, it's icing on the cake. Now, when I look at the people in the miscellaneous townships who aren't going to be up near the bay watching the fireworks, who are going to be footing the bill, whether it be a penny or two from their taxes, or the employees who are facing imminent discharge because we can't pay our bills unless we watch our pennies, I'd have to say, you know, the balance is quite clear to me that from a private enterprise, if the hotels want to support it, if the Traverse City Convention and Visitors Bureau wants to support it, that's the appropriate place, but I don't think the county is the appropriate place And, of course, that's just my opinion, but I would stick with that during any vote towards this.
Herb?
First of all, this next year is going to be a rather different year because the 4th of July does not come anywhere near the festival. The 4th of July is on Wednesday before the festival, and the festival doesn't start until the 7th and goes to the 14th, so there's going to be 10 days in between. So it's really going to be difficult for the kickoff for our tourist season, so to speak, by not having the festival. That festival really is the kickoff. So I think it's all the more important that we have a 4th of July fireworks, because that really kicks off the season. And I'm going to probably open up Pandora's box here a little bit, but when you talk about taxing, the people that pay the taxes for our community, the motels and the restaurants pay a lot of taxes. And if we can help them to be more successful by having fireworks, I think this is an opportunity for us to spend some of their tax dollars that they have spent and that they pay into the Grand Traverse County. $5,000 is a minuscule dollar amount.
And we found that some hotels were donating to this in addition to the tax dollars that they give to the CVB, plus the taxes that they pay. It's that
and
important.
they should, but I'm just saying is that that's just a small amount.
Ross?
I supported the fireworks last year, and I will certainly support it again. I would also, by the way, support the $1,000 to Fife Lake, which I did previously. I mean, we didn't give them any money this year either. Yeah, it does sort of fall under the heading of bread and circuses, but first of all, it's a very, very small expenditure in a $38 million budget. And it is something that everyone can share in, everyone can enjoy, residents as well as non-residents. There is no charge for this. It is a celebration of a very important day. And I just, I was very disappointed and even a little ashamed that we couldn't come up with $5,000 and this year. And as far as Commissioner Gilman's comment about, he doesn't think we should be spending people's tax money even if it's only a penny, but yet we're not going to refund that penny if we don't spend the $5,000. Just like if we lay off all the custodians, we aren't going to refund the savings back to the taxpayers. So anyway.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I do think we could make the argument that strictly on economic development, it's a good investment to make, but I think that if you talk to the residents of Grand Traverse County, even if there was not one penny to be made on this in terms of economic development, they would still want those fireworks.
Rob?
I'm kind of reminded last summer when I was working with one of our employees at our store, and they were listening to a radio station that I don't like them to listen to anymore. One of the DJs made a very derogatory comment about fudgies and the tourists here and how he just hates them, wish they'd all go home. And, I turned the radio off and I said, if it wasn't for those guests of our area, you wouldn't have a job. Because that summer season is what makes or breaks our local economy. And that argument is totally aside from the fact that it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, because it is Independence Day. It is a celebration of the things we hold dear.
Jason?
Just as far as refunds go, anything we make a decision on doesn't mean that anybody's going to get a refund, Commissioner. I don't think that, we should minimize the importance of the taxpayer contribution to our operating expenses, and I just don't think we should add to our operating expenses with activities that were obviously important enough to the community to self-fund without our help. So, again.
Dennis?
I just wanted to, I know you'll be asking the public if they have any comment on this, but if the board decides they want to do anything with this, Dean and our recommendation would be you have set aside for next year $100,000 in the contingency fund, and we'd say that would be the best place to take it, or that would be our recommendation, take it down to 95 and transfer it over. Or the other option you would have, of course, is to wait till the first of the year and take it out of your contingency fund at that time if you so choose. So I just want to give you a couple options there.
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Can we still have money in our contingency fund this year, do we
You
not?
have money in this year's contingency fund, so I guess conceivably you
we-
could take
could
it out
we
of
mail
this
the-
year's.
Could we mail the check in December and?
We would take it.
No, and in fact, it would probably help them out in their efforts to collect from other units of government. So yeah, we've done that in the past. Often, we've looked at year-end and done it out of year-end if you so choose.
I
You
would
could do
rather
that.
not put it in next year's budget, but that's just me.
What do we do the next year, though?
You hope that there's
You
money
hope
left
there's
in
money in our
next year's
contingency fund. Okay, okay.
Number one, I don't know that it's legal that we give that money to an organization like that. In fact, the veterans, we couldn't give it to the VFW or any of that, and I'm speaking from a township level. I'm not sure the county, but I would think the statutes would be applicable. That's, under Michigan law, you can give to the coalition, governments can, for like the fireworks, but that was the only way. That's why the coalition was originally formed, okay? Number two, I paid my tax bill on, September 13th. And I really don't appreciate my tax dollars being spent on fireworks displays for Independence Day. We went many, many years without any fireworks in this city. And a lot of those days I worked. And I was asked by tourists, why doesn't Traverse City have fireworks? Well, I didn't have an answer for that, but I knew every place that did, and I used to tell them. Alberta, Frankfort, Fife Lake, Sutton's Bay, Lake Leelanau, and Leland. And those organizations, if those small communities could hold them, I could never understand why the greater Grand Traverse area couldn't. And I'll say the same thing to you today that I said to your boss there when he was in last year asking for the 5,000. I think that ought to come from private donations and business donations. My business, for example, suffers from the influx of people Cherry Festival week, because the natives who are my customers, very many of them, they don't come out, and I can show you on a chart, I can tell you which week was Cherry Festival week just by looking at the revenue drop. But I think that ought to be privately funded, and I don't think we should be spending taxpayer dollars on it. And those 11 or 12 employees, or 15, if we have to lay them off this year, they're going to think $5,000 is a significant amount of money. How can they dare spend $5,000 on fireworks, or like he said, fluff, when I just got my pink slip? I can't do that with a clear conscience. So I'm not in favor of this board or the county supporting it with taxpayer dollars.
If I could just respond to a couple of the things you said. First of all, I'm not an employee of the CVB.
Okay.
I am a resident serving as a volunteer on this committee. And my role on the committee is to work with businesses and a few individuals who have contributed to this. And the reason that businesses feel so strongly, other than their being patriots, whereas you say that tourist business, especially that time of year, the influx hurts your business, most of these businesses feel that it's because of that influx during that time that they have customers the other 50 weeks of the year. And yes, it can be an inconvenience to have all those people here spending money, but it's what funds their abilities as residents to pay for services and to live here the rest of the year. So I would say that. The other point, I completely understand all of you who may be feeling that given the tough economic times, as Commissioner Gilman was saying, it's fluff. It is fluff. I mean, it's important fluff, but sure, it's fluff. But our residents feel strongly about it. It would be, as you said, an embarrassment to say we've canceled our 4th of July fireworks. We were almost a national news story that we were going to have to cancel our fireworks. And that's why the three of us on the committee feel strongly about not asking for any increased dollars. In fact, right now we only receive half the municipal dollars that we did, say, 8 years ago, and that all of the growth that comes in what we're doing will be private dollars. I think private-public partnerships are the way of the future, and more of our activities and our even capital assets for our county are moving more and more toward private-public partnerships, and we are going to be the poster child of exactly that effort. And we were very successful in our first year of operating that way.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Sonny?
Well, I'm trying to remember when, but I know for a fact all the time I was growing up, there was no 4th of July fireworks in Traverse City. And I've been here all my life, and I'm going to say until the last 10 years maybe, was where there was never any 4th of July fireworks. And I remember when they had the first 4th of July parade, that they'd had in like 30-some years, But I do understand the idea of celebrating our patriotism. I absolutely do. And I understand the bringing of the people into our community and the benefits of that. But I tend to agree that it is not appropriate for this board to spend taxpayer dollars to provide that service. That's not a service that truly benefits, that I can tangibly show a benefit to my community. If it benefits the businesses, it benefits the restaurants, that's a great thing, then I would suggest that they pay for it.
Is there any members in the public that would wish to comment on this topic? John? Come on up and state your name, please.
John Nelson, 4022 Incochee Crest Commons. I didn't come here to speak to this, but since it's up there. Regardless of who funds this, if there are fireworks, my question is, and you probably can't answer it, and this question comes from a comment that I got from Seattle, and they're wondering if we knew anything about 100% burn or a complete burn fireworks as to eliminate any debris in the water, which does include heavy metals in these fireworks. So I don't know, maybe we have no burn now or 100% burn now, but I have not heard of that, and it's just a question out there to maybe consider for both fireworks displays.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? What's the board's wishes? We'll discuss it later?
Are we going to make all those decisions in one fell swoop?
Well, we're not going to make them individually, so we'll just put it off as a budget discussion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, who are the others? That's what I want to know.
TC
On the
Tallis.
agenda here, it says others.
Well, no, TC Tallis.
Huh?
TC Tallis.
Well, not on my agenda.
You're looking at an old agenda.
I must have an old one.
Yeah.
It's not
All right.
Could you give him a new one? Is there a new one there, Linda? TC Tallis is the last thing we had on.
All right, Matt, come on up.
Matt, just introduce
Yeah.
yourself as
Here.
others.
My gosh, he is on there. It says Matt Skeels.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Others.
I believe I have a couple of board members here that might want to add to my discussion. I just have a short presentation. Would you like them to come up first, or?
You can go ahead and make your presentation, Matt, and then we can have them come up. That's not a problem at all.
Thank you.
And then we can have our discussion.
Sure.
So we've got the whole story.
I was before this board about, June, July, talking about the TC Tallis budget for actually this fiscal year that ends September 30th for me. And one of the stipulations that the board, your board wanted was a report as to what we're doing and how we're addressing some of the concerns that this board expressed at that time. So that's what I'm here to do today. So I want to just briefly mention a couple of probably the major things that we're doing. First and foremost is we are actively working on our strategic plan to sort of realign ourselves for the future. My chairman, Evan Smith, and myself, who Evan is on vacation and could not be here today, we met with a number of our board members to discuss their views on where they think the Talos Board should go in the future. We transcribed all of the comments we got. We formed a committee of the board members to review those comments, and the committee has kind of charged me to come up with a proposal to realign TC Talos. That is not done yet. I have a meeting, as a matter of fact, with Matt McCauley, the Council of Governments, tomorrow to get that started. But the general concept that the marching orders that I was given by that committee, the members of that committee, excuse me, were to maintain the autonomy of TC Talos and the TC Talos Board of Directors with an urban area focus, the focus being on the TC Talos defined area, which is Traverse City and 9 surrounding townships, to seek a closer working relationship with the Council of Governments, to allow for potential of sharing staff back and forth without, as the current agreement, we have to essentially write contracts for myself to work for the Council of Governments or the Council of Government staff to work for TC Talos. So we're looking to kind of get away from that if that's at all possible. We're hoping that will reduce costs for TC Talos. And one of the main things that the committee wanted to ensure was that there was going to be no reduction in TC Talos work program. So we're going to do everything that we currently do and hopefully do it more efficiently and effectively into the future. My intention is to have that plan and the agreements necessary to implement that plan before the TC Talos Board in October. And I would hope that the board would adopt, will have comments, I'm sure, but will adopt it before the end of the year, end of this calendar year, excuse me. The other thing, probably the major thing that I'm working on is our long-range transportation plan. That is the main purpose of TC Talos. We're currently reviewing the population projections that were done in conjunction with the Grand Vision study, particularly the travel demand modeling portion of the Grand Vision study. We're going to compare those to the census data that has just come out, the 2010 census data, to ensure that our population projections are in line with the actual census data. And if there are any differences, we may have to go back and sort of recalibrate our model to that 2010 base year, because that's the best information that's available. The forecasts, financial forecasts for determining how much transportation revenue is going to be available to this area in the next 20 years is a critical part of our transportation plan, because we can't just go out and put on paper that we're going to build all kinds of roads, widen all kinds of roads that we have no possibility of getting the money to do. And I'm sure Mary can testify that doing financial forecasts in this day and age is pretty difficult, especially with road funding. We haven't had a transportation reauthorization bill in a number of years, and it's just been extended another 6 months. So forecasting is a difficult thing, but we will do the best we can and come up with the numbers that are acceptable, and we will move forward from there. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, the board adopted our budget for the 2011-2012 fiscal year. We didn't do that for any other reason than we had to. October 1st being our fiscal year, we have to have a budget adopted. So what I did was I presented the identical budget from last year and moved it forward to this year. Both revenues and expenses were exactly the same. The board did stipulate in their approval of that work program and budget that I am not to bill for membership dues until the strategic plan and revised budget is approved by the board. So that's likely going to be after the first of the year, as I mentioned, so I can't give you an exact number, what we would be looking for at this time. I can tell you that we have identified a number of, well, the major budget reduction item that we have done is I voluntarily waived my health insurance benefits, which will result in about a 12 to 15% reduction in our budget for next year. And we hope that, as I mentioned during the discussions with the Council of Governments, that we can identify some more cuts that we can make, efficiencies that can be realized by a closer partnership with the COG. So once we get all of our financial information together, I will present a budget, revised budget to excuse me, my board, and we would have a better idea of exactly how much we would be looking for from the different members at that point. So that's about all I had in terms of a presentation, and if, I guess it's up to you to call them up.
Yeah, if you would go ahead and call them up, Matt.
Sure. John or Mary?
Either way, whatever is comfortable. All right.
Mary Gillis, Grand Traverse County Road Commission Manager. I was asked by commissioners on my board to come speak in support of TC Talis. Many of you are aware we've had significant investments in the Grand Vision. The Road Commission has spent $100,000 on this community input vision for our future, and it includes, I mean, the driving force behind it was transportation. To reduce funding to our long-term, long-range transportation planning at this point would be disastrous to that investment we've already made. I think Talis is one group that gets together and pulls on a wide variety of different communities, the urban area, the school system, TART. We pull all the vehicles together so we can discuss transportation priorities and work on the Grand Vision. I'd hate to see the funding decrease for this at a time when it's particularly needed. And we need to get this long-range plan done, and I guess that's all I have to say.
Jason? Mary, you say that the Road Commission asked you to come. Was that a unanimous?
The board didn't make a decision. I was asked by commissioners. The board decided in this year's budget to fully fund. Our allocation for TC Talis is $35,000. That comes at great cost to us when we have employees laid off.
Would you have, I mean, could you say that the board is unanimously in support of Talis?
They were when we voted on the budget this year, yes.
Unanimously?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe.
All right.
Matt, are you a county employee?
No, sir. Technically, well, not technically. Actually, I'm an employee of the Northwest Michigan Council of Governments.
Okay. So we're not paying
I'm
any of
not
your
in that
benefits or
situation.
anything else? And so if you waive your health insurance, does that mean your wife has health insurance?
That's correct.
Okay.
Ross?
Well, first of all, is there any other public comment that's going to come?
Yeah.
John Nelson, 4022 Inca Crest Commons. I'm here as a citizen-at-large member of the TC Talis Board, and I also represent one of five of your road commissioners as well. TC Talis, as Mary so well said, brings together a diverse group of so many different groups, represents so many different groups. It's the only organization that does that, where people can sit around a table with all these various groups. I did speak with Mark McKellar, the Vice Chair of the Road Commission. I endorse what he put in his letter. I read it carefully, and we talked about that. I would say that the Road Commission, by its vote to fund its share of Talis, is unanimous in its support. It is the planning arm of the Road Commission. to put together its long-range plan. We do not employ a planner. So that's very, very important to us as road commissioners. Any questions?
Does the road commission feel that it needs a full-time planner?
We need someone that can be someone who can do full-time planning, yes. Whether we do that with a full-time planner or we do it through TC Talus.
In years past where the Grand Vision did not exist, did the road commission always have a full-time planner?
Matt can answer that better than I, but I believe that's the case.
Well, no,
to some extent.
the road commission, I was, originally when I was hired, my office was at the road commission and I was a road commission employee, but I was contracted out to TC Talus 100% of the time. So Talus reimbursed the road commission for my expenses. So.
Okay, prior to Talus, was there a full-time planner?
No, sir.
So at once upon a time, we didn't need a full-time planner for the road commission, correct?
I think that's fair to say, and I think the road commission...
I know it sounds like I'm trying to drive the point home, but I'm...
Well, no, but I think the point that I understand what you're saying, but the other side of that is, at some point in time, the road commission decided they needed a full-time planner, and that's when they set up Talus.
I can speak only for myself right now as one road commissioner who's been heavily involved in the Grand Vision as well. And I will say, from my perspective, we need a planner. We need someone who do careful full-time planning, yes. What happened in the past, I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the future. And to the future, we need a planner. We need someone to do full-time planning, yes.
I've been to, as of course you are aware, I've been to the TC Talus meetings, and I, of course, have not been to several years' worth, but the few at the beginning of this year. And the time that I was there, I didn't walk away with any kind of sense of value. And then there's the other part of it that actually, that I disagree with is what is a big part of this grand visioning. Now, I note that the Elmwood Township Supervisor has written us a letter in support. That is a part of our record. And but he also notes that he does not have a unanimous support for this particular position. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, knowing some of the principles involved, it's for some of the same reasons and concerns that I have, that it is a part of this grand visioning, which not everybody supports. Not everybody in the community was a part of the grand visioning. Not everybody has the time to go to these collaborative events. And oftentimes, before people realize what's happened, the community's been steamrolled and private property rights are lost, and changes are made where somebody from out of town came in and kind of played a game. I don't think that TC Talus has any real value other than the planning position. And if it's a planning position that the road commission is concerned with, I would say a part-time planner then to look at traffic patterns and what we need to accommodate potential growth is sufficient. The grand vision, of course, adds a whole lot into that. You know, extra paths and bike trails, and oftentimes bike trails that people don't even use as they ride down the road in the wrong direction, ignoring all applicable laws anyway. You know, so anyhow, I don't support Talus. I couldn't possibly support Talus in the future. And believe me, I really enjoy the people there. It's just something I don't think that we should be funding. And that goes again to, should we be funding something like this? If it's something that the road commission wants to fund fully, that's up to the road commission and how they answer to the public.
Ross?
Well, honestly, Jason, you've made it clear that you don't support planning in any way, shape, or form. And I think we all do get that. There is a big difference between the Grand Vision and what TC Talus does. Now, the Grand Vision project was actually supervised by TC Talus, but TC Talus is about transportation planning. The Grand Vision is really nothing more than an expression of the community as to what the community at large thinks the community should look like when we're done. And obviously that's always subject to debate, and most of those decisions are made at the local planning level, not by any kind of a regional or even a county arm. I've been on Talis for almost 3 years now, and for me, the most important thing was, where did the road commission stand on this? We can build transportation systems with or without planning, or we can even build transportation systems with or without good planning. But one way or the other, we're going to build them because we need to build them and improve on them and maintain them. So in terms of, what the amount of money that the county puts in, and you heard that the road commission puts in $35,000. This year, we're putting in $16,850, which is actually less than we put in even last year. Last year, I think it was $18,500, or somewhere around there. Maybe it was $17,500. The point is that it's part, a whole lot of different people put money into Talis to pay for math services, to pay for transportation planning, and so forth. The main beneficiary of that is honestly the County Road Commission. Possibly some of the beneficiary is the City Streets Department as well, because they're the only local entity that's actually building roads. When I say local, I mean county. I do think this county board has tried to support the road commission, in most ways that we can. 3 years ago, before I was on the board, they actually borrowed money to help fix the roads, in conjunction with the road commission. And this amount of money, this $17,000 or $18,000, is one way that we can support what the road commission is trying to do and deliver better planning and better transportation to the residents of this county.
Herb?
Yeah, if you really want to go back farther, we used to have the Northwest Regional Planning Commission that covered, 5 counties, if I remember correctly, and it was a real collaborative opportunity for people, and that kind of went by the wayside because of all the individual personalities, I think. But it probably isn't the same situation as we are today with the TC Talis. There's a lot of concern as to what is it that we do, what is the end result, and how do we continue to keep it together to make it become a viable organization for the people in our community. I think that TC Talis has done a great job, but also the other comment I wanted to make is that the grand vision was started by us as the county commissioners. We're the ones that started it, we're the ones that implemented it, and then we're charging with TC Talis to carry on that particular part of the vision. So, and I would like to say also that Thursday night is the Grand Vision's report to the community as to where they're at and some of the projects that have been done. So, I really encourage everybody to come down to the State Theater, 6 till 8,
6 to 8.
Yeah, 6 till 8 Thursday night. So, I've been a strong proponent of TC Talis. I've been a strong proponent of transportation and how it affects us in our communities. I don't think that our federal government funds it correctly. I don't think the state government correctly funds it. I don't think locally we fund it correctly. We got to do something with how we're going to take care of our roads. Our roads are creating a major hazard for people who live here with car repairs. It's a huge hit. If you get yourself into a pothole, I put $700 worth of wheels on a car, and the insurance didn't cover that. And I'm sure a lot of other people are putting shocks and absorbers and wheels and everything else on their tires. We've got to figure out a better way to figure out funding for our roads, period.
Jason?
Roads. For every dollar spent on an extra 4 feet in the side with a white stripe, that's an extra several potholes not filled in or miles. The point is, every time we spend a buck let's talk about fluff again. The roads themselves, the purpose of the roads is to move vehicles. not bicycles. If people want to walk, I mean, if there is extra, you build a sidewalk. And if the road commission is supporting this complete streets, supporting the visioning, which is supporting complete streets, we're spending extra money that oftentimes isn't even used. But it becomes a mandate on a community to build an extra sidewalk, an extra 4 feet, and then we don't have the money left over to actually appropriately take care of our roads, which is the main function of the road commission. And I know Mary really wants to get up here and talk. She's just going nuts. Wants to answer me, but and I think she should, because if she has something to say, I think she should come up here, Mary.
If I may, when I interviewed with this commission to be a road commissioner, a question was asked to me, do I support complete streets? I can't disagree with you more, Jason, that I do support the whole idea of complete streets. So that, to that extent, that's where I'm at, as one road commissioner.
Sonny?
Well, TC Talus, transportation and land use. You know, I sometimes, and Matt and I have had discussions a lot of times about whether or not we're truly evaluating the other half of this, the land use piece. But what we're seeing more and more throughout our community is townships, cities, villages cannot continue to plan for their future. They can't afford it. We're going to need these regional planning opportunities. When commissioners took their little survey of the things that were important to them, you know, we didn't have TC Talus wasn't a question in there, but planning was. And it specifically talks about in here county-wide coordination of planning. And that includes, to me, transportation planning. Now, our planning department doesn't do transportation planning. That's what we contract with TC Talus to do. You know, this is a partnership that we've been involved into a long time. And I don't completely disagree with you in regard, there are parts of the Grand Vision thing that I don't buy whatsoever. But there are other things that I do, but what I support the most is the process. There was absolutely a long, ongoing, open process to engage the public. Now, when the public chooses not to be engaged, that's not my fault to sit here and try to second guess what they said they wanted or what they do or don't want. You know, we had a very open, involved public process that the people were involved in. And if people chose not to be involved, it's really hard for them unless, you know, they line up in this room and give us public comment, which we rarely get. You know, it's really hard for me to sit here and say, the people that were involved in this process didn't know what they were talking about. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to do something else. I have to support the public planning process, and that's what we get with TC Talus and what we get with the Grand Vision.
Well, I would just say that, you know, and again, referencing Commissioner Gilman's comments about complete streets, the whole idea of complete streets is that streets are transportation systems. Not every single user of a street or a person who needs transportation is, you know, somebody sitting in a large SUV. There are people who walk, there are people who bike. Those are transportation systems. Now, you may not want to recognize it's a transportation system, but they do exist. There are a lot of people in this county who can't afford to own a car. But you know what? They still have to get around. They still have to get from where they live to work, to the grocery store, or whatever. There are many people who are disabled and can't drive, and so on and so forth. And we have tried to address these concerns. But to say that any spending on transportation outside of, you know, the fastest way to get in an automobile from point A to point B is, I think, a little narrow, to say the least.
I have to address that. It's not about the fastest way. It's about the safest way. It's about having roads that are appropriate for traffic patterns. And again, not every situation requires a side path. I mean, I look at, for example, this has to be a part of this Grand Vision, that the Traverse City, that intersection at 8th and Woodmere, that's a cluster, in my opinion. having that bike path that runs along the side, and there's a sign that says, and I noted it today, and I thought to myself, that is just the silliest thing in the world, must yield to bicycles. Now, I remember one day, a guy rolls up alongside of me like this and runs right in front of me. Am I supposed to yield to that? I mean, as I'm turning the corner, he's completely in my blind spot the entire time, and all of a sudden I've got a guy thinking he's, got the right of way. That's messed up planning. And if that's a part of the complete streets, I don't want to see any more of it. It's a throwaway of money. And, the whole thing is, and as far as the planning process, and, I don't support the process, because I think these types of sessions, they come in and they have a predetermined outcome, and the predetermined outcome, the facilitators, they tend to isolate those of us who disagree. And those of us who disagree and don't want to become a part of the process later on, then we don't have any input. Now, it's real easy to isolate those of us who disagree by just knowing what we disagree with. And all you have to do is frame the conversation in a way that those around you might disagree with you in a few ways. Eventually, it makes you quiet. When you're quiet, your voice isn't going to be heard. I won't be intimidated from the conversation, and even if it's a little late and after the fact, I disagree with the grand vision, I disagree with the process, and I disagree with the outcomes like complete streets and this visioning that really costs a lot more to communities than they realize. And you talk about people who can't afford vehicles. There's reasons, because of all of those extra costs. So again, all of it, a part of it. Let's have good roads. If the road commission needs a good planner, hire the planner. I think that's an appropriate way to do it, but I think that the overall process of TC Talus is just throwing good money after bad.
Ross?
I'll make this brief, because we could go on for hours, and I think people have really better things to do.
Yeah, but it's not going to.
I said I'd make it brief. First of all, I find it interesting that the person who can't afford an automobile can't afford an automobile because he pays too many taxes to support bicycle paths. And my other comment is, again, as I made the comment about, you made it clear you don't like planning, I would also say your animosity to anyone on a bicycle is well noted, and your animosity to spending any money to accommodate people who ride bicycles as a method of transportation is well noted.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this subject? I don't see any. John?
Mary's being
Try
smart.
to get back to the subject, John.
Yeah,
These guys have forgotten that.
I also serve on the Planning Commission of Garfield Township, and we do not take the grand vision as gospel. We support the grand vision, I believe. I do, at least as one commissioner. I think as a commission, I don't want to speak for the commission, but I know them well enough that they're buying into the grand vision. But we take every decision very carefully and don't take the grand vision as some kind of dictate, first of all. As far as land use goes, to Sonny's point, we just at our last meeting of Talus endorsed a project that COG will be doing to use Kellogg money, which came to us through the grand vision, to go out to some of these communities that don't have the resources to do land planning for their community, and allow them and give them resources to do just that. And that is a grand vision project.
Thank you, John. Well, unless somebody has a real emergency, I think we've talked enough about this topic, and we'll move on.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you,
We
Matt.
appreciate it.
I have one.
Okay, now we're to others.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think the other section was really kind of set there for other issues commissioners might have, or actions that the commission might want to take as a result of what they've heard or other things in the budget. So, I don't know, maybe commissioners have other things.
Herb?
Yeah, I had on my agenda the economic development funding, and I didn't see where it got in there. But, I really would like us to continue looking at continuing that funding. I know that Next Michigan is coming on board, and some of the people feel that very strongly that that's going to probably be some funding there, but doesn't take care of the Grand Terrace County businesses. And I'm afraid that if we don't continue funding that we won't have anybody representing us in those areas. And I'm just concerned about that particular funding. I just wonder why we won't put it in there, and why we wouldn't want to continue that funding.
Dennis?
Well, I've had several discussions with Doug Luciani of the Chamber on this issue, and the reason that it's not in here is first budgetary, because of our, we're in the position of cutting employees, and, this seemed to be one of those extra appropriations, even though I believe economic development is important. Doug's comment to me was that they are going to be providing economic development services to Grand Traverse County regardless of whether we can participate or not. Our participation this last year came out of funding that was part of our economic development revolving loan fund, which is going to be taken away from us here in the next couple of months. So that mechanism to fund this was going away. My understanding was that it was going to a regional organization, and that the Chamber of Commerce was going to be a part of that, and Doug confirmed that they will be doing at least marketing and will continue to do economic development in the county. So while Doug would love to have the extra $40,000, I think he understands the situation. Doug did ask me to convey to you that that if he had his druthers, what he would like to see is the county consider increasing, and I have to check on this, Commissioners. We are part of the Chamber. We are a member of the Chamber. But frankly, Doug's recollection was that these last several years we have not paid dues. And the reason is because we're paying this $40,000 economic development fund. His suggestion was, and we have talked about this for more than a year, his suggestion was he wanted to ask if the board would be willing to consider to be a leadership member of the Chamber, which I think is about a $4,000 cost, which would help with their economic development efforts. And then beyond that, what he suggested, and this came from our discussions over the last several years, that what they would do is they would provide general economic development services to us, because we are by far their largest client, their largest county, but that if we used them to assist in specific economic development projects that we were a part of, and we called them in for special expertise, that what they're going to do is they're going to set up an hourly rate system based on the service they provide. And that really is a good thing for us, because one of the things we've always said is, how do we know what we're getting for our $40,000? So the idea that they would put hourly rates on that, and we could hire them as consultants to assist us only when we chose and when we needed it, and then paid money for that in those circumstances, I think is a good thing. So, and Doug is supportive of that and thinks that's a good way to go. He did ask for us to consider to be, I think it's a Leadership Circle Chamber member, and I want to say it's $4,000 or $4,500. But he understands that the county's not going to be able to put the $40,000 in, and he seems very comfortable with it under that second proposal that I just laid out for you.
Sonny?
Well, everyone knows that I have long supported anything that had to do with economic development in this community. Problem is, right now, I have way too many questions about where this regionalization is going to be. You know, we've been notified that the state's going to take the money from our EDC. We've looked at, you know, they're going to put a nonprofit corporation in control of the money. I guess, you know, that being said, right now, I'm not prepared to just throw out $40,000 more money. I'd like to sit back and see what happens with this, what happens when the group comes together. You know, I'm fairly confident if there's economic development in this region, it will be here. It's going to be in our community, and you know, that only makes sense. This is where the populace is. This is where the development already is. This is where our transportation is. So, it's, you know, it's going to be here. And we need to, you know, keep in mind, you know, what economic development means to our community. But at the same time, I'm not prepared to just give them $40,000. I want to make sure that this county, through its planning department, most likely, is an active participant in the creation of this regional development. You know, I believe John Syke and Gene are already working with that. You know, there's a very good likelihood that designated as the next Michigan facility, but I'm still not exactly sure what that means. You know, I read an awful lot of information, but I'm still not sure that I'm convinced of exactly what that's going to mean for our community. You know, there's a lot of rhetoric in that paperwork, and it's really tough to determine exactly what it does mean to us. But what I do know is that economic development is going to be handled regionally. And this county board was way out in front of this when we declared that we would spend our EDC money in any of the communities within the Grand Vision area. So we're only gaining one county. The state's designated that we have 7 counties. We had designated 6. But, you know, exactly how this is going to come together, how it's going to be administered by this nonprofit corporation, I have too many questions to say I'm ready to appropriate a $40,000 appropriation. You know, I think we have to continue to be active with the Chamber of Commerce. I believe that's important to our community, but I'm not prepared to give them $40,000 for EDC until I know what this thing's going to come together. And you know, we've worked very, very hard in this community to have our EDC a revolving loan fund, to build that fund, and now the state's going to come in and take that money away from us and put it in this control of other people. I want to see how they control that money and what they do with that money in our community before I talk about giving them more.
Rob?
I move to accept the budget as recommended by staff.
Support.
What was your motion again, Rob?
To accept the 2012 budget as recommended by staff.
Chris, you seconded it.
I did.
Ross?
Well, first of all, obviously there are a number of issues that we have, not taken a vote on yet. But even apart from that, there are other things where, promises have been made by our county administrator about, we need to change the language there. For instance, just to give you an example, the language in the budget about how the housing thing through county planning is going to be handled is not even reflected. I mean, it's not reflected in the budget what we discussed about here. So there has to be a change made there. There was another issue, just a small issue I had with the TART appropriation and how that would be handled. Again, I was told that an amendment would be made and presented as when we had the whole package. But mostly, we don't have our chairman here. He has a very good reason, obviously, not to be here. We don't have to have this done until the end of October, and I would think that the least we could do is, if there are no more presentations to be made, that we schedule a meeting next week when he's available again, so the entire board, including our chairman, can discuss and vote on this budget. I think we're a little premature on the motion.
Dick?
Yeah, there's several areas that I couldn't vote for the budget as presented because there's several areas that we haven't taken care of yet. One is we put off a vote on whether we're going to lay these 12 people off or not. And I'm not ready to vote by a long way. We've got too many things to. I was ready to approve the budget the first day. by the way.
Sonny?
Well, I have to agree with Russ and Dick. This vote would be terribly premature, and I won't support the motion. I've got half a dozen pages of notes that I've made while we've heard from department people and from employees and citizens. I've got a multitude of little yellow marks in here where I've highlighted things in this budget that I want explanation for, and I can't support the budget as is drafted. I do absolutely want to commend Dennis and Dean for their work. I don't know where I would have begun to try to put this thing together, but there are still bits and pieces that I'd like to talk about, and I believe we owe it to the people that have come to these 3 public hearings and spoke to items that are in our budget to review and have a discussion amongst ourselves and make a decision on those items before we approve the budget as drafted.
Jason?
I don't think I tend to support this motion. I don't think we're discounting those people who have come and spoken before us, not at all. I think it's prudent to recognize the number of hours that our administrator and our finance director have put into this in actuality, and they put a lot of careful thought based on the forms we've filled out, the opinions that we've demonstrated throughout the year. And I'll tell you, though there are things that I'd like to cut, there are more things I'd like to cut, I have a tendency to think that we're going to start to creep back into pulling more out of the general fund as a result of further deliberations. And I think the grand compromise right now might well be passing this budget as our staff has recommended, after going through to the different departments and getting their recommendations and appealing to their sense of fairness in taking the cuts that they could take. So I think I'd have to support this at this point.
Chris?
Well, there are a whole lot of things I don't like about this budget. I could go on ad nauseum, as you all know I can. I don't like the fact that we're spending $625,000 out of fund balance, because it's going to leave us with approximately $100,000 out of fund balance next year. I look at the proposed reductions that we had in the 2011 budget. There's nothing, there are no structural changes, really, in the reductions that we had to 2011 budget. And the reason I supported the motion is precisely what Commissioner Gilman said. I think we're going to be creeping back and adding and adding and adding, and we're going to be asking our staff to find money when there isn't any. And so that's the primary reason that I supported the motion. I think we need to take a look and trim that $625,000 out of fund balance, but I sincerely doubt that I'm going to get much support on that. So,
Rob?
Well, that's precisely why I made the motion. I'm basically offering a compromise, because I know there's people here that want to add more dollars into this budget, and we don't know where they're going to come from, and we got people that want to take more out. And I thought this was an opportunity, at least a preliminary compromise. I would remind the board that we can change this. It just takes a vote. I mean, we can, if you got something very specific you want to bring up, we can always revisit issues in the budget and change it. This would just give us a starting point to move on, and staff would have an idea of what they're looking forward to next year. Just to review some numbers, I know some people are talking about getting some more money into this budget, getting more money out of this budget. We can look at fund balances and look at how much money we have here, and we can pull it from there to there. We can just try to wring every drop out of our funds in the county, but we still got to remember we've got some liabilities that are coming up that aren't going to go away, whether we squeeze more money out of this budget. And I think we need to be very fiscally conservative minded. Looking at the nearly $40 million in unfunded liabilities with the MERS, and another $4.8 million in retirement health care that's we're doing pay-as-you-go right now, but that's a liability that's out there. It's a lot of money, and I think this would be a great compromise for a starting point, because we really need to be mindful of these things that are going to be coming a few years down the road.
Ross?
I had a question for Commissioner Maxbauer. Are you actually preparing to vote for the budget?
Yes.
Have you ever voted for a budget before?
Yes.
You have?
Not that I remember.
One.
Call question.
I've got a letter here, and I think perhaps all of you received it from Larry Inman, Chairman. And he says, If there are any issues that arise regarding budget or issues that arise at Ways and Means, these issues can be deferred, if these issues can be deferred to the board meeting on September 28th when I'm available. So Larry's asking, you know, obviously for some more input. I am not prepared to, I appreciate what staff did.
Thank you.
I know about budgets, they're a lot of work. I've worked on a few in my life, and I'm not prepared to chop 15 people off our payroll at this time. I'm absolutely not in favor of the custodial staff getting rid of that. I think we need to talk about it more. We got 500 employees, you know, perhaps we need to go out and look for some cans in the ditches, you know, at 10 cents a piece, we could turn up some money. But I think Ross kind of hit the nail on the head when he said there's a lot of little things, and Sonny also, there's a lot of little things we need to talk about instead of just passing the budget, because once the budget's passed, for our newcomers, and Herb, you're not included, you're an old timer. You're correct, Rob. You know, it can be changed, but let me tell you, down the road, it becomes a very difficult thing to change. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't make any difference. You're better off to start out with the proper product and decision than to make a decision and then start changing it, you know, weekly at our committee meetings and then our main budget meeting, so.
If this motion fails, you know, and as it looks like it's going to, then I would have to say we'd have to follow it up with a motion to just adjourn any other budget discussions until our chairman can be back. Because if that's the position that we have to take, is that we can't make a decision on the budget until he is present, then we might as well move it off until after the 28th.
No, I'm not, Larry's request is not that, and I don't think he'd be so pompous as to say, I don't want you to make any decisions without my vote or my input. What Larry's saying, he's very interested in this product. He's given a lot of his time as the chairman, and, you know, it's very unfortunate that his father died yesterday morning. And I think that's just a simple request. If you made that motion, if this motion fails and you make the motion to adjourn the budget talks until the chairman is able to return, I'll support that motion. But it's not because we're missing Larry. It's because we need more time to discuss all these little
Well, if for nothing else, then, as a part of the discussions, then perhaps we should have a full complement of commissioners as a part of the discussions. And frankly, to not have the chairman's experience as a part of this is maybe not such, it would be helpful, I think, too.
Sonny?
Well, I believe that we are scheduled for another budget meeting on Thursday. Tomorrow.
If needed.
Tomorrow is Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, but my point is, there are items within this budget, items within what we've heard from people during the course of these hearings, that I believe that we as commissioners need to discuss amongst ourselves before we approve the budget, or recommend the budget. And we don't approve the budget here anyway. We recommend the budget to the county board for approval at their board meeting at the end of the month. But the point is, those discussions should be had before we recommend the budget.
And Dennis, the budget doesn't have to be approved until our October meeting, is that correct?
It's the October meeting, but we have to have it to you at Ways and Means in October.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but we have, so to speak, another month at least.
Yeah, but please keep in mind that when you get done making your decisions, we have to make all the changes to the budget to bring to you. So you got to give us a little bit of time so we can bring you
That's why we gave
one.
you such a qualified assistant as dean.
He's extremely qualified.
Well, I don't mind, moving forward if you guys don't mind listening to my arguments, because I've got a few. But one of the things I do want to suggest is, if we're going to add something back in, then we need to suggest where we're going to take it out. I just don't think that it needs to be on Dennis and Dean's back as to where to find the money. But that's my only comment. And I can certainly understand that we would want the chairman here, and so I'll vote against my own supported motion.
Call the question.
Okay, I have one other comment. You know, we talked about the EDC money. And yesterday at MAC, I attended a breakout session where they were talking, the EPA brownfield money. And a commissioner asked a question. He said, well, now, if we put the proposal together for this brownfield, and we can come up with this big development, if the more we have involved, meaning other counties, you've got a consortium, say, of 4 counties that are going to benefit by this program, he said, we would definitely get the nod, or we would be a lot better off doing it in that thing like the state is suggesting. And you know what the EPA's answer was? Absolutely not. We look at each individual project on its own merits. If it's a single entity that proposes it, and he says, let me tell you, when we're sitting there and we're looking at them, we don't know the players, we don't know the project, we go by what we're reading. And he says, the single ones, if it's well-written, has a good proposal, they're the ones that are going to get funded. And the commissioner says, but the state is wanting regionalization. He says, well, that may be their philosophy, that's not our philosophy. So you've got 2 distinct opposites there.
Typically.
I have a question. It appears that this motion is going to fail. I'm actually not necessarily sorry, because as I said, I've got a few arguments. But my suggestion is, should we, I mean, let's be honest. If we start our next discussion on this on the 28th at 7 o'clock, we're going to be here till midnight. Shouldn't we have a special meeting that afternoon, as long as the chairman says that he can come on the 28th?
We could defer, for example, if the commissioner...
And go ahead and cancel tomorrow's meeting?
Can we vote on the motion and then discuss it?
I did call the question a couple of times.
Okay, everybody understand the motion on the floor?
Yeah.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Wheeler.
No.
Axbauer.
No.
Thomas.
No.
Richardson.
No.
Lemkool. Sorry.
No.
Henschel.
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Chairman Fleece.
No. Motion fails.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we delay all budget hearings until we get our chairman back, and to the 28th.
Let him establish the...
We can establish the date.
Can you add that it should be a separate time
Oh, yeah,
other than
separate
our
time
board
from our
meeting?
board meetings, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is there support for the motion?
Sure.
Okay, everybody understand that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask, what does 3 o'clock on the 28th look like for everybody?
We do 2 or no?
You need an extra hour?
do
Yeah, we could do 2.
We could.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I'm checking with Chris now to see if the room's available, but just to get an idea, would 2 o'clock next Wednesday work for commissioners for the special board meeting?
2 o'clock next Wednesday?
Mm-hmm, that's the 28th.
I can make it work.
Oh, that's right.
How's that sound?
I'll make it work.
Hey, you're ruining my weekend.
Fine.
Ross?
Oh,
Dennis,
you'll be gone.
Well, I may not be.
Trooper.
I ran into a problem, or the guy going with me ran into a problem, so,
Good, he'll be here.
yeah, if we don't go, I'll be here. Russ?
Well, I was just going to, Dennis, do you want commissioners to give you a list of the topics that, I mean, most of them I think we know, but maybe we need to, for us to give you a list of the topics that we want to discuss.
It would be great if everybody could give us a list of the topics by, let's say, Friday of this week. That way we can list them on the agenda and the public will know at least those topics that are going to be discussed at the meeting. Further suggestion that I would have would be to, because I just don't know a better way, do it the way we've kind of always done it. Take them one at a time, have the discussion, take a vote, move on to the next one, or package them or whatever, but, kind of go through them and tick them off so that we can kind of bring this to a conclusion.
Right.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind that we've already talked them to death.
Oh, no, we
Doesn't
haven't.
sound like it.
I'm ready.
You had your chance.
That's right. Voted yes.
Say goodbye to the sun.
No, it doesn't make any difference, because I'm either gonna be here or I'm not, and hopefully I'm not, but, not because of the budget, it's because of where I'm going. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Public comment.
yeah, we gotta have public comment. I see the supervisor from Garfield Township smiling, so perhaps he'd like to talk, but is there anyone in the audience that would
Yeah, it's like,
like to comment on something? For our second public comment? Chuck?
And that doesn't happen very often.
Is that going to be in the minutes?
Silence. Jen? Okay, motion to adjourn.
All gone.
Okay, we're back at 7 o'clock.
Stock market went down 280.